G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, midweek report time. So, before we get into the topics of this week, the news topics, all things boxing, I always start with fights that have happened. So obviously, yesterday we had Naoya Inoue taking on Paul Butler for undisputed at 118 pounds over there in Japan. They do tend to do a lot of those cards during the week, which, if you can get the time off, a lot of those cards are great because it's nice to watch them during the day. Obviously, I was working during the time and couldn't quite get away with having the fight up on screen. But I was looking at Twitter, kind of round by round, people were saying that it was not compelling viewing. I'll put it like that. Obviously, Inoue got the stoppage in the 11th round. He really went into overdrive in that 11th round because I seen the stoppage and he really put it on Paul Butler, went to head and body, and he really broke Butler down in that 11th round. But you see that 11th round and you think, he really must have done a number on Paul Butler. You see the 10 rounds prior to that, you're just like, what is this? Paul Butler, to me, he fought a fight that he knew deep down he was never going to win. That's how I see it. I think he went into that fight knowing, I'm not going to beat this guy, and I want to get a moral victory by going to 12 rounds with him. That's how it seemed. He fought very negative. He didn't want to get into any exchanges. He didn't want to punch. He didn't want to throw back with Inoue at all in this fight. And he seemed just content to just box negative, go through the rounds, and try and lose. Because he lost every minute of every round. This was not a competitive fight. But I think that because he fought that type of fight, it kind of took a bit away from Inoue. Because I've seen Inoue a lot better than this. And I know people have said, and I think there was a little bit of a rumour going around, that he was struggling a bit, really struggling to get down to bantamweight this time. And Inoue is someone who's gone through the weights, quite quickly. He's really filled out over the years. I mean, this is a guy who started at 108 pounds, bypassed flyweight, went straight to superfly, and was already, after only one fight, having a hard time getting down to 115. So you can imagine that's his last fight at 118. It's super bantamweight now, next on the agenda. There's some good fights to be made there. I'd love to see him and Stephen Fulton. But rumour mill is that Fulton might be going up to 126. I'd love to see him if he's fit and able. And I won't mean if he's not drained, that he would be able to take on Inoue, because I think that's a great fight. Great fight. In terms of this fight, it was what it was. It was a very negative performance by Paul Butler. Didn't try, in my opinion. Tried to get a moral victory by going the distance. And, he won his world title he didn't win it. He was due to fight Jean-Riel Casimero. Casimero obviously had his issues, and the fight never happened. So he was elevated to full champion. So realistically, the undisputed fight should really have been Casimero versus Inoue, and that would have... Look, Inoue would have probably won, more than likely, but Casimero would have went down swinging. And I think that's kind of the way... That's the way you kind of want to see it, When they go down swinging. They try. Paul Butler never so much as tried in that fight. From my view, never tried in that fight at all. So, Inoue, 118 pounds, super bantamweight, undisputed. The first, I believe, definitely the first in the 4-belt era, but I don't remember the last time there was a champion undisputed at 118, a very long time. So, massive big up to Inoue, one of my favourite fighters to watch. Absolute, just since he was been at 108. And he's one of the very rare exceptions where his power has just improved the more he's gone up in weight. I suspect a lot of that is the fact with look at how smaller he was at 108 pounds compared to now. He's much bigger, huge at bantamweight. So, I think he's a lot fitter. He's not having to drain himself, and you're seeing the result. I mean, some of the knockouts he's had at 118 have been devastating, absolutely devastating. So it'll be interesting to see what Inoue does in 2023 moving forward. In terms of boxing news, because we can go into that, where do we start? I mean, I think we're going to start with Lawrence Okolie and this whole Eddie Hearn situation. Now, I watched the IFL interview with Lawrence Okolie and Eddie Hearn. With Lawrence Okolie. They weren't in the same interview. I watched the IFL interview with Coogan and Lawrence Okolie. But shout out to Base the Kid. Look him up on YouTube. Very, very good channel. Base the Kid, all one word, and that is DA, the Kid. He sent me a link on Twitter to Boxing Kingdom Media's interview, and he was saying that this was better, and it was a better interview. It was a much more detailed interview. Lawrence Okolie, again, his side of the story is that he, as far as he was concerned, he'd come to the end of his deal. He'd come to the end of his Matchroom deal. He was offered a deal, and Eddie Hearn confirmed this. It was Sky Sports. You know, Eddie Hearn was interviewed by Umar, IFL Umar, we all know. And Eddie Hearn was saying he was offered by another company, I think is what the words he actually used. And then Umar basically said Sky, and he was like, yeah, Sky. They wanted Okolie to be the face of Sky Boxing. Now, just picking up from the interview Eddie Hearn did with IFL, he sounded, just from what I could gather in the interview, when he was talking about Okolie and he was talking about Sky Sports and what their plans were for Okolie with the offer, there definitely sounded bitterness, maybe is the best word I can use to describe it. He definitely didn't sound too chipper when he was talking about it. And the way Eddie Hearn, I know I'm going a bit off, I was talking about Conor and talking about Hearn, but the way Hearn was saying it, he was like, you know, oh, Okolie is the face of boxing on Sky, as Frank Warren would say, do me a favour. He didn't say it like that, but was very dismissive of it, you know, which I again, you know, I mean, I wonder what else has happened between these two, because the rift between these two seems real. It seems a real rift. I know there's been a lot of things happening. You know, Lawrence Okolie stated that obviously he'd come to the end of his contract at Matchroom, so we thought in May. He was given his offer by Sky, a big offer, and he went to Matchroom and said, I don't expect you to match this, but can you get close to it? They said, no, we can't. At which point he said, well, I'm going to go and jump ship. As Lawrence Okolie said, they essentially moved the goalpost at that point. They were saying, oh, no, you have one more fight in your contract, but if you want to get out early, you're going to have to pay us. So, you know, that's a bad look, as far as I'm concerned, from Eddie Hearn, if that's in fact is the case. Obviously, the way Lawrence Okolie handled it, and he's admitted himself, he didn't handle it the best. And I think that, as I said in the video, I think the way Okolie handled it, he's probably made life harder for himself than it needs to be. I think maybe if he'd been a bit more, and I know it's hard when that is thrust upon you, where, you know, and it's, believe me, like, it is very difficult. People keep moving the goalpost to keep calm. But in many instances, a lot of the times when they do that, it's because they actually want to just get a reaction out of you. And I think Lawrence Okolie, I'm not saying this is the case, but I think that was what happened with Lawrence Okolie. It was a sense of that they moved the goalpost, now I'm going to bite, you know. And I think that's what's caused this to drag on. It's probably made things harder than it needed to be. It really has. In terms of Eddie Hearn's comments on the situation, he basically said that, look, he's lost money on Okolie, which he no doubt has. I mean, you only have to look at the Seslak fight. I mean, that I can only imagine how much of a hit he took on that. But he said, look, they can't match what Sky were given, because he said it was just, Okolie was never going to bring in what Sky were offering. And very interesting, Eddie Hearn has also stated that the whole boxer Ben Shalom thing. Now, Ben Shalom, obviously, we know he's got an enormous budget with Sky, which is very strange. Because, you know, as people like Hatman have pointed out, and it's true, if you go back and look at it, Eddie Hearn, when he started out on Sky Sports, and I actually thought this was going to be the case with Ben Shalom, because I was very surprised when he was making the signings and putting pay-per-views on. Eddie Hearn, when he started out on Sky, he was doing a lot of boxer shows. He would have, you know, people like Luke Campbell, Tommy Coyle, top of the bill. Yeah, Tommy Coyle was in some very, very good fights in the old days in Sky up in Hull. But the arenas were small. They weren't small hall, but they weren't, you know, the O2 or the Wembley Arena or the Manchester Arena, places like that. They weren't like that. They were fairly, you know, bigger than small hall, but not that big. And he was doing a lot of the prize fighter tournaments. The prize fighter tournaments caught on, it became very popular. I think he stopped them in 2015 was the last one, if memory serves me correct. And Ben Shalom, he started out doing the boxer tournaments, which essentially is the same thing that prize fighter was. Now, I know he has done some on Sky, but I honestly thought that when he took over with Sky, it was going to be a lot of boxer tournaments with the occasional signing and just, you know, a very, very slow, bit like Eddie Hearn with Matchroom. Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, they didn't just, because they did take over British boxing for a large part of time, and they brought it out of the doldrums, they really did. But it wasn't a quick case of, right, we're here, we've arrived. It wasn't like that. It took a couple of years, and it took, Carl Froch and George Groves having their rivalry. It took Anthony Joshua's rise to fame. That definitely helped, a big part of it. And I think as well, Frank Warren, at the time, he had such a bad rep. He'd gone over to Box Nation. It was subscription based, and a lot of people I think a lot of people were like, Frank Warren's had his day. He's come back swinging. That's what Frank Warren is. He's a fighter. Frank Maloney, Frank Maloney was near the end at that point. He had David Price, to be fair. David Price was on a lot of Sky shows the Friday fight nights before Eddie Hearn took over. And then Maloney just went between Channel 5. He had a couple of shows on Box Nation. And that was it. And that was the end of Frank Maloney in boxing. So he's obviously toyed with coming back, but that was years ago, and I've not heard anything from him since. So that was Frank Maloney. Dave Colwell went down the road trainer. So Eddie Hearn was kind of the only real guy with mainstream connections, so to speak, because obviously when Box Nation started, BT Sport wasn't the thing. So I thought it would be something similar with Ben Shalom, that he would, slow but sure, he wouldn't have many decent fighters or big name fighters and stuff like that, but he's come on and he's just made a load of signings, and it's weird. And Eddie Hearn, I have the article here, actually have it saved. It's with No Smoke Boxing, and he says that he's basically saying that Boxer and Ben Shalom have third party backing. So it's not just Sky. We've seen it, third party backing with Al Heyman. We see it with Boxer. He says once the money burns out, everything changes, but during the period you have to compete with all the new boys. He said Hearn is confident that the increased Boxer budget have true investors. So it's not, Eddie Hearn is saying in this interview, again, NoSmokeBoxing.com, he's saying that Boxer and Ben Shalom have third party investors, which has led them to make eyebrow raising financial plays, will be short lived, and soon enough they will have to start offering market value for fighters, and fighters where the British public is adamant that the zone backing will see him outshine them. So he's kind of saying, Eddie Hearn there, I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent, we're starting with Lawrence Okolie, but he's basically saying that isn't that not kind of what he did with the zone, in a way, over in America, where he was signing guys like Demetrius Andre, he was signing guys, who else did he sign, Mikey Garcia, just to name a few, Jesse Vargas. They were getting crazy amounts of money, but they weren't recouping any of it. And I think he took a loss on all Demetrius Andre shows, certainly, because Demetrius Andre wasn't making any money, and he was getting some very good money. So when that ends with Boxer, apparently, he's got these third party backers, Ben Shalom. And again, Ben Shalom's my age. How the hell does he have all these connections? Once all that ends, Eddie Hearn is kind of hinting that, a lot of fighters will jump ship, they'll want to leave, etc. It may be the case, we'll wait and see. But in terms of him and Lawrence Okolie, as I said, there seems a lot of animosity there, definitely. And Eddie Hearn, when Okolie said, the contract said he'd be the face of boxing on Sky, he was very dismissive of that. Now, to be honest with you, I probably agree with Hearn there. I couldn't see him being the face. But no disrespect to Lawrence Okolie, but his style is just not the most fan-friendly. I think Sky and Eddie Hearn, when Eddie Hearn was with Sky, tried their best to make Okolie almost AJ 2.0. I don't think Okolie has the charisma to do that. Not say AJ is not Mr. Charisma, but I think AJ with just the physique and the looks, is a bit more endearing to the public. Okolie just doesn't have, not say he's ugly or anything like that, he's not, but you know what I mean. He's not Mr. Universe like AJ. If you know what I mean. Okolie is a long, lanky cruiserweight. More likely going to be heavyweight, but he's not a bodybuilder like AJ. I think that played a big part in it. So that's the situation with Eddie Hearn and Okolie. It's a very, very interesting one. It really, really is. It's very interesting. In terms of some of the other news that's been going on, obviously we have the Terence Crawford, his own kind of Glovegate scenario. And yeah, the Terence Crawford one is interesting because, someone reminded me in the comment section that Russ Amber, he was in the corner for Oscar Rivas when he fought Dylan White. Now, we all know what happened post-fight there, but does anyone remember the issues with the gloves? Apparently Dylan White originally was going to wear the Denaro gloves. Now they're an Italian manufacturer, I believe, the Denaro gloves, he was meant to wear them originally, but changed the last minute to flies. And if I'm right in thinking, didn't Russ Amber say there was an issue with them being able to inspect the gloves? And Terence Crawford's gloves, Avanesian actually posted a picture of it on Instagram. Again, I say, if those are the gloves post-fight Terence Crawford used, there is no way in hell anyone can convince me that those gloves were not used. They look, right? I know hitting a human is very different to hitting the bag. Hitting a human is a lot harder. But believe me, people, it doesn't matter if you're hitting a human being 6 rounds, 3 minutes of every round. You are not going to have that much wear and tear on a glove. There is just no way. Those gloves, if they are Terence Crawford's, looked worn to bits. Seriously, they look worn to absolute bits. There is no way in hell those gloves were brand spanking new gloves. And if it's true that Team Avanesian weren't allowed to inspect them, then that really is bad. That's really not good, and that just reeks of corruption. I'm just going to say that's what it reeks of it. Because at the end of the day, if Team Avanesian say, look, these are allegations now, but if they weren't allowed to inspect them, right, if they were allowed to inspect them, I should say, they would have seen, they would like, you can't fight in these gloves. No way. And then there would have been an issue. So, I don't know. I really don't know. It's a very, very strange situation, this whole Terence Crawford Glovegate scenario. I think the PBC, the fanboys over there, they are going to absolutely lap it up. I think because, Spence is their guy. And look, I love watching Errol Spence as well. But, they will lap it up because they'll just be like, see, he cheated, and Tyson Fury cheated. He wore the exact same manufacturer gloves when he fought Wilder. Someone would probably say when he wore them in the 3 fights. He only wore them in the first fight. And he's only started mentioning the Wilder first fight when Tyson Fury knocked him out in the second fight. Despite the fact he had a different company glove. He was wearing Paffin Sport in the second and third fight. So, yeah, the PBC, guys, you know. In terms of some of the other news, obviously we covered this already this week. AJ and Derek James. I really like that. I think that would be a good fit. I really do. I think that would be a very, very good fit for Anthony Joshua. I'd like to see him over there with Derek James. I'd like to see him commit to one single trainer. I would like to see him, I've said this once, I'll say it again, sometimes just getting out of the comfort zone, as hard as it may be, because it's not nice, right? Sometimes if you're used to going to Sheffield, you're used to a particular trainer, leaving that trainer and going abroad to train with someone else, etc., it can be daunting because you know your routine. But sometimes a change is the best, and sometimes staying in that environment is the best. Billy Joe Saunders is a good example. Went to Adam Booth after he split from Mark Tibbs the first time, and it was too close to home. He needed to get out of there. He realised that, based himself somewhere else, went up to Sheffield with Dominic Ingle, and we saw the results. However they came, we don't know, but we saw the results. He looked a lot better aesthetically and physically, in my opinion. And I think AJ needs something similar. I think he needs to base himself with one trainer. I don't like this whole this trainer 1 minute, this one the next, this one the next, this one the next. No, just one trainer, right? All well and good to try a few trainers out and see who you gel with, and then say, right, me and you gelled, I felt the best with you, let's make a go with this, let's have a plan for the next year, 18 months to work together, have this many fights. That I like. Not just, I'll fight with you this fight and then I'll fight with this guy next fight. I don't see that working out long term. I really don't. I said the Ring Magazine have now returned Tyson Fury to their rankings. Ring Magazine rankings currently look like this: Usyk as champion, Tyson Fury number 1, Wilder in there at number 2. Joshua is ahead of Joe Joyce, interestingly. I would put Joe Joyce ahead of Joshua personally. Ruiz at number 5, Dylan White in there at number 6, ahead of Ortiz, ahead of Parker, ahead of Hrgovic, and ahead of Frank Sanchez. To be honest with you, I would put Hrgovic number 6 and Frank Sanchez number 7, because all the 3 others are coming off else. The 3 of them are coming off all else, so I would be shimmying them around a bit, but I don't really mind the ring rankings too much. That's just my opinion, though. Dylan White was also on Instagram saying to Joshua, let's run it back. So he's looking to get his fight, he's looking to get this rematch with Anthony Joshua. So it's going to be interesting. I said Eddie Hearn has booked the O2 for the 25th of February. Whether that's going to be Joshua or not, I don't know. But you would imagine Joshua's going to fight realistically within the first 4 months of 2023. So will it be Dylan White or will they do someone else? I don't mind the Dylan White fight. I haven't seen how he looked against Jermaine Franklin. I think that's actually a fine fight for Anthony Joshua to come back with. Personally, I think he's going to blow Dylan White out of there. I really do. I thought Dylan White might have a bit more left than he showed against Franklin, but I think Dylan White is there for the taking, truth be told. This is good news. Leo Santa Cruz, 3 years later, has finally vacated his WBO featherweight title. That means Lee Wood is now elevated to full champion. That is the correct thing. So it means Lee Wood is free to fight Mauricio Lara, is free to fight Josh Warrington, because obviously the WBA mandated that Lee Wood and Leo Santa Cruz fight. So there's no issues now. There shouldn't be any issues. He should be able to fight who he wants. I'd love to see him fight Mauricio Lara. I think Mauricio Lara is due a title shot, to be honest with you. I really do think that. And there's talk about January or early February. I prefer early February, truth be told, just because I don't want it to clash with the Yarde Beterbiev fight. But I like that. I like Lee Wood versus Mauricio Lara. I'm glad he's elevated to full champion. I'm glad now he can say, I am the full champion. There's no way. Because, like, that's one of those situations where it's like, are you taking the piss? You had this guy as champion for 3 years. He's not fought at that weight for 3 years, but somehow he still retains his title. Just strip him, you know. So just he's clearly not going to come back down. So just get rid of it, you know. Golden Boy have won the purse bids for Staniones versus Virgil Ortiz with a bid of 2.3 million. TGB Boxing bid on behalf of Valhema. They bid 2.1 million. So this fight will be on the zone in the new year, and boy am I looking forward to this. I think that's going to be an absolute firefight. I really do. I think Virgil Ortiz will win, but Staniones versus Ortiz, that's a fight that you would stay up for, because that is going to be just mayhem. That's going to be a brilliant fight. Really looking forward to that one. Really looking forward to that one. And again, the WBA, again, they have officially ordered Alexander Usyk to defend his WBA, IBF and WBO titles against mandatory challenger Daniel Dubois. So Dubois has now been elevated to mandatory challenger. He is obviously the regular WBA champion for what it's worth, and they do that, where they will mandate the regular champion to face the full champion. Now, having said that, they do it as a kind of consolidation, but then they let other people fight for the vacant regular, which makes completely no sense to me, because they've done that before. You know, they've done it with Danny Jacobs and Triple G, and yet we still have regular titles knocking around. Make it make sense. However, Frank Warren has actually stated that despite the fact they've ordered it, the Tyson Fury Alexander Usyk undisputed fight will take priority over the Daniel Dubois mandatory title shot. So, you know, it's an interesting one there, because obviously the winner of Usyk Fury is going to have mandatories. They're going to have mandatory with the IBF. They're going to have mandatory with the WBO. They're going to have a mandatory with the WBA. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, Tyson Fury wins, right? He won't be undisputed for long, because he'll give up that IBF title, not because he's afraid of Hrgovic, but because he has big beef with the IBF. He will throw that title away. Hrgovic will fight for a vacant title. The WBO and WBA one is an interesting one, because they're both Queensberry fighters. It's a real case of who does Frank Warren, which one does he think will make the most money? Personally, I think out of the two fights, you know, just saying Tyson Fury wins, I would rather see him in there against Joe Joyce. I think it's a more competitive fight, and I think it'd probably generate the most money, because Dubois is known to the public, but you've got Joe Joyce, who is starting to, I think, gain a bit more notoriety amongst fans. Olympic silver medalist, you could sell it like that. I prefer to see, and I give him a better crack at winning than Dubois, truth be told. I would. I'd give him a better chance of winning that fight than Daniel Dubois. Josh Warrington has insisted that despite his loss to Luis Alberto Lopez, he intends to fight on, and he's called out Lee Wood. If Lee Wood wants it, I'd be grateful for that opportunity. I've gone from the driving seat to the B side. I'd be more than happy to take this one. That's very interesting. So, and Josh Warrington's acknowledging the fact that, look, I'd be going into this fight as the challenger. I will be the B side. I took the L. I would love to see him versus Lee Wood. However, I feel as though as Mauricio Lara has earned a title shot by this stage. He deserves one, I feel. So I would rather see Lara get that crack first. That's who I'd rather see it. Imagine if Lara wins. Would Josh Warrington be calling for a Lara rematch for the title? It'd be like, I want Lee Wood for the title. Lara's won. I want to move up to 130 pounds. I think that's what we'd be hearing. Frank Warren is they're still actually in talks for Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury in the UK. Right. I still want to see that fight. I don't know why. I still want to see that fight. I still want to see it. There's something about that. Something about Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. I just want to see it. Again, I would... Honestly, if it was pay-per-view, BT Sport, take my money. I'd probably do a watch-along. I would definitely do a watch-along, actually. I wouldn't go to it, but I'd do a watch-along. This one's not... I'm not happy about this. I'm looking forward to this. Oscar Valdez is reportedly injured and set to pull out of his planned fight against Emmanuel Navarrete for the vacant WBO super featherweight title. It's now claimed that Navarrete will fight Liam Wilson for the belt, with the winner facing Valdez. Okay, so the winner of that is going to face Oscar Valdez for the title. So he'll obviously be mandatory challenger. Okay, so we'll still have a chance to see it, but yeah, I was looking forward to seeing those guys. That would have been a hell of a fight. I would have made Navarrete favourite. I would have had Navarrete favourite. I really would have. I will end it on this. Eubank Jr. reacted to Conor Benn's statement saying, my team have proved my innocence, without showing any evidence or anything to say that you're innocent. Just a statement that says, my team have proved I'm innocent, so now I'm innocent. Happy days, ha ha ha. Yeah, that makes sense. But Chris Eubank Jr. has put a couple of sleepy emojis. Now, I'm not going to... This has been done today. I'm not going to stay on this too long. Conor Benn, I've said it once, I'll say it again. If he is innocent, and we see some compelling evidence that says, yes, this is why both tests were failed, and it's legit, look, thing, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, right, look, legit, innocent, moving on. A lot of people won't do that. I think that stigma will be with him for a while anyway. Not long, boxing fans do tend to forget. But I think going into 2023, if he was fighting May, June, it'd still probably be there in people's minds. Probably after that, it would probably go. But, you look at the whole situation and he says, my team approved my innocence. Right, why'd you give your license, British Box Border Control license, away? You imply that they treated you unfairly. How have they treated you unfairly? They've pulled a fight, right? They've pulled a fight in which one of the fighters has failed their drugs test going into it. Not to mention a drug test prior to that, back in July. So they've pulled that fight. They've launched an investigation as to why that's happened. And you feel that, they're treating you unfair? Make that make sense. Because that doesn't make sense to me. So you're basically saying that, oh yeah, British Boxing Board of Control, I do not like them. I have no respect for them. Alright, I think they're just... The way they handle boxing at times is horrible. But they've tried, they seem to be trying a bit now to kind of right the wrongs, many wrongs they've done over the years. And from what I've seen, they've handled the situation as they should. They've took action when they've needed to. They've said with UCAD, we're going to investigate this. What more? Is Conor Benn just expected to turn up and say, I didn't do it, and then to turn around and say, right, fine, fair enough, here, do whatever you want? It's not like, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So we watch this situation unfold with Conor Benn. As I've said several times, if it does in fact, and we see some, because I'm not an expert on PEDs and stuff like that, but from the outside looking in, I've said it once, I'll say it again, he just looks guilty. You gave your license. Why? If you were innocent, why would you give that up? So I'll leave it with that. I think we've covered a fair bit in Midweek Report this week. I think I've touched on everything I needed to do. So, people, I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you could, please smash the like button. Obviously, we've got a fight card on this week with Sky and Bournemouth. Looking forward to seeing Dan Aziz, Rocky Field. I'm looking forward to that fight. And I think that's pretty much it then until Christmas. So, obviously, we have to review the year. Obviously, we have to do that. And yeah, I've got plenty planned over the coming weeks. Put it like that, going into the new year. So it's just a case of just seeing what comes up, because I think Christmas time it tend to be very not much happening in the world of boxing. Although January is shaping up to be a pretty busy month though. So we'll wait and see what happens there. In terms of everything else, people, I'll leave it there. Getting there. We're below 250, less than 250 away from 10k. Oh, do you know what? It's like I'm just hyper focusing on it now. I don't want to. I just want to get the 10k and then right on to the next one, on to the next 10k, and then we're good to go. So I'll leave it there, people. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. If more news comes in, as always, I've got you covered. Always, your boy has you covered. I'm go-to for boxing news. There you go. Go-to. Always. As soon as I see news, stand out, recording, boom, let's do this. For now, I'll leave it with that. Hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. For now, I'll talk to you